Hello everyone, Cedarnet here with a slightly different video for you today. I just wanted to share my thoughts on something that the Avalanche community has been talking about a little bit of the last few days, and it's around tokenomics, specifically in relation to AMMs. Now, as you may know, AMMs work by essentially having people supply the tokens into the liquidity pools, and then whenever people trade those tokens, they basically shift the balance of the pools, and that's how the price changes. Now, this is also how you're exposed to impermanent loss, right? So if one token's value drops, then people are gonna use that token to buy the other token in the pair a whole lot. So in the end, rather than when you take out your share of the pool will not actually be perfectly in balance, but you will have a relatively large amount of the token that has a decreased value. And your impermanent loss is basically the loss in the compared to what you would have had if you had not supplied liquidity, right? So in order to encourage people, liquidity providers, to deposit their liquidity into the AMM, rewards are offered. Normally there is at least a percentage of the transaction fees, but of course these cannot be too high because then people wouldn't use it to trade. So they're kind of settled around 0.3%. Now, what most AMMs offer as a reward instead is their own token. So for Pangolin it would be PNG, for Yetiswap it would be YTS, etc. But on Avalanche we've seen a lot of these tokens drop in value rapidly. And I think this is partly to do with the tokenomics behind it. So here's the dilemma basically for an AMM that starts up. They need to find the balance, and it's a delicate balance, between attracting enough liquidity to be able to function without overflowing the market on their token and basically having people dump it. Because liquidity providers, if they're incentivized only by the gains of your token, they're basically only incentivized by the value it represents in another token, right? And with this many AMMs launching, basically they're just looking for wherever they can find the highest liquidity. So what happens is some new AMM launches, high farming yields, a lot of people go there to provide liquidity, token dumps because it gets sold off, and as soon as the token is dropped in value enough, liquidity providers move wherever else they can get the most rewards, leaving early investors into the AMM with a lot of loss if they bought the token. And basically it may be also an AMM that is not actually as high on liquidity as it should be, because a lot of the liquidity has moved elsewhere to farm somewhere else, right? And of course, auto compounders kind of make this feature a little bit worse, because what auto compounders do is basically the same, that you stake whichever winnings, whichever earnings they get from the pools and reinvest that. And if that pool does not contain any of the original token, for example, no PNG in Avalanche on the Pangolin exchange, then basically it's going to create a lot of price pressure on the tokens. One more thing that I think exacerbates the problem is that there is not actually that much to trade for on the Avalanche blockchain yet. While we are seeing, I think, a large hunger for people to use the Avalanche blockchain, especially the community that it has, right? You see that in the sale of the crypto seals or the snowies that get sold out in huge hype just to spend AVAX on something, basically on the Avalanche chain. But a lot of the things we trade against are either the AMM tokens or Ethereum tokens. And it's fine if you're a trader, you make use of the lower Avalanche fees and the quicker block time, and it's a pleasant experience. However, if you want to use the token, it's not so useful because the token's utility is still on the Ethereum blockchain, right? If you buy something that's based on Ethereum, probably it's only gonna have any utility on Ethereum. Basically, for the token to be useful, you still need to port it back at this moment to the Avalanche Ethereum bridge. And I think many of you would agree that that's not the most pleasant experience there is. Now, I have no doubt that given a bit of time, we will see a lot of super cool projects launch on the Avalanche blockchain, like no doubt at all. But I do think that for the current state of trading and tokenomics and AMMs on the Avalanche blockchain, this is a factor, right? And that's just a point I want to make. Now, next to having more, native Avalanche tokens, I think one thing we need to see is a bit more differentiation between the AMMs. Currently, we see a lot of AMMs launching that are some version of a sushi clone saying, hey, just if you our code is not audited, but basically, if you believe Sushi is right, just compare our code with what Sushi did, and tell me if you see anything wrong. Maybe not literally so, but it's kind of what it feels like to me. Now, I'm not a developer. I'm not going to check it. I'm kind of assuming that someone I follow on Twitter, or someone who is followed by someone I follow on Twitter or whatever, is going to spot something before I'm in too deep, or is going to break it before I'm in too deep. And that's kind of my risk management at the moment. It's not a very good way. And a lot of them have built some sort of vision for the future, but have launched in pure AMM state, right? And so basically, from my perspective, they're all at the moment very similar. So there is no real reason for me to use one exchange over the other. I just go into like YieldYark, or maybe just do it by myself and see maybe where I can get the best rate. But aside from that, I'm just using it for liquidity mining, right? So I'm curious, right, about the future when all those features launch, and maybe we see a bit of differentiation, and then maybe people stick around. They start to get a favorite exchange, or at least more of them will get a favorite exchange. And maybe that's the moment when some token prices recover a little bit, and maybe that's also when we can definitely see which ones have maybe failed. Which brings me kind of to my last point, which is the tokenomics of things, right? So I think a lot of the exchanges have launched very heavily leaning towards the we need to attract liquidity side, and thinking a little bit too little of the retaining a community, building a community, long-term vision side. So I'm also thinking about Penguin Finance. That's most likely the next project to launch within the Avalanche ecosystem. And last week, Frostbite, their developer, took an hour of time to walk me through some of their plans. And we actually spent a lot of time talking about tokenomics even before this, this whole conversation took off. And so I know that this is something they have been putting a lot of thought into, right? To protect the early investors. And that's something you'll hear them repeat a lot. Some of the features, they've been talking about is the slower emission rate, burning of tokens. Of course, a lot of their future features are already connected in their planning, as I saw. Talking about, I think this is public, so the Penguin Arena NFT support. It's already connected to their tokenomics model. Now, that's no guarantee, of course, that anything, it's no guarantee of anything in the future. But it is hopeful to me that, they've put a lot of thought into it. And they've also started to build more of a community. I'm not trying to say that other exchanges definitely don't do this. But not most exchanges have taken an hour of time to call me to talk about this kind of stuff. So it gives me a good feeling, at least, right? And we'll have to see. But yeah, in short, I think just my thoughts, and happy to have a friendly discussion about this in the comments. Also, just if you have any new thoughts to add to this, happy to hear it. But also just wanted to inform some people of what's going on. In conclusion, I think we need three things. Just more utility, more apps on the Avalanche blockchain, tokens that are native, but native utility. And I have no doubt that those will come. We need AMMs that have a more distinct user experience, that are different, that have a vision, and that are able to basically execute on some vision the moment they launch, and not just launch a Sushi copy with promises. Finally, we need whoever launches on Avalanche or anywhere, and especially if you launch an AMM, to really think about the tokenomics of things. Now, I don't think everybody can just be or hire a game theorist, but we do need some more thinking beyond just how do we attract liquidity, and start thinking more in terms of, and how do we sustain a community? How do we keep a healthy, token ecosystem going? And the best way, of course, is to maintain a good price of your token, right? So curious to see what Penguin will do. Curious to see what the other AMMs will do. And I think this is basically the end of my video. That's basically what I wanted to share. Just wanted to share some thoughts on it. especially for the people that may not have been, completely up to date on this conversation. Now you have a bit of an idea of what's going on there. Guys, I hope to see you in the next one. It's most likely gonna be just whatever launches next, probably actually Penguin Finance on the Avalanche blockchain. I hope you'll join me for that one. And for now, bye bye.